If you want to hear firsthand what happened behind the scenes on the 232 petition, you need to watch this video. Hello and welcome to our viewers on cruxinvestor.com. And if you're new to Crux Investor, please click the button in the corner of the screen and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We spoke earlier to Mark Chalmers, he's the CEO of Energy Fuels, and he talks to us about the President's reaction to the 232 petition, plus his expectations of the 90-day working group. We ask him if he's made any enemies along the way. Plus he discusses state versus federal subsidies. We also look at M&A, cash, plus has he any regrets? If you want to look at any of those topics, click on the timestamp in the description below. So let's hear what Mark has to say. Hey Mark, how are you?
Very good, Matt. How are you?
Not too bad. Now we spoke last back in April. That was a long time ago. It feels like a long time ago, and a lot of things have happened, including your favorite topic, 232 petition. So what's your reaction to all of that?
Well, look at, I think that firstly, when we thought that there was going to be a decision on the 13th or 12th of July, we were expecting a positive decision for good reason. And we didn't get that immediate relief that we had hoped for, but we're very encouraged with the fact that two little companies in Colorado, UR Energy and Energy Fuels, filed a petition that now is going into a new review, which is looking at the entire nuclear fuel cycle in the United States at the highest levels of government. Probably the most extensive review done in 3 or 4 decades on the front to the back of the nuclear fuel cycle.
Right, and so we're talking about the 90-day working group, which off the back of which was announced in the Presidential Memorandum by Donald Trump. I mean, it wasn't what you wanted, but are you seeing that as a positive? I guess from your press release, you see that as a positive.
Yeah, well, look at two small companies couldn't tackle the whole nuclear fuel cycle, okay? It was too big for us. So we focused mainly on the uranium front end. We certainly did mention that other portions of the fuel cycle were challenged. There's a number of positives here. I mean, we thought we had line of sight to some relief literally within 24 to 48 hours for good reason. Some of the positives is Secretary of Commerce said it was national security issue. The president agreed with that. A remedy was put forward. We don't know exactly what that is, but the report from Commerce will be public, and this new review group is getting started as we speak.
Okay, well, let's talk about that, because we're dealing with, you've kicked off a very big topic. I mean, Donald Trump did say that, in June 2017 that he announced an initiative to revive the nuclear sector. And this memorandum does talk about nuclear fuel production rather than specifically uranium. And there's a lot of moving parts here. It's hard to, I guess, deliberately hard for us to all interpret exactly what it means. I think the language is vague, but let's try and see what you read into some of this. Okay, so I'm gonna, because I think everyone's claiming a win here. Okay, everyone's opinion has changed over time. I think lots of people are claiming wins here, but I want to understand what you think. So I'm looking at section 2 of the memorandum. The United States requires domestically produced uranium to satisfy the Department of Defense requirements. Now, that's the only bit that I can find that specifically talks about uranium manufacturing production in the US. What else are you seeing in there that's good for US uranium producers?
Well, look, I think that, the Department of Defense requires US produced uranium, by treaty. But look, I think that the memo itself indicates that the complete fuel cycle for defense and our power plants is challenged. It's broken. We don't have the ability to basically chase what we do with in terms of a lot of our infrastructure, but not all our infrastructure. But we do have ability to mine a pound of uranium right now and run it on through conversion, enrichment, and up into the more highly enriched products with our existing infrastructure.
Right.
Now, with regard to the Department of Defense, they have to purchase uranium from the United States. The utilities do not currently have to produce their uranium from the United States, and that's the differential between it. And as we know, like 90-some percent plus 99% is being imported into the United States right now. But I think the key grabs from this review is, as we said, we started off with a focus on the uranium mining. It's now a larger focus. The audience, the members of that working group are secretary level, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Interior, Secretary of Treasury, State Department, FERC, NRC. These are all, the top of the tree. It's basically the president's cabinet, minus a few people like Homeland Security and Health and a few things like that. It's floated to the top here.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a no, it was no, we need more time. And I think that was the key element. They needed more time.
But this one I'm trying to understand. So there's a lot of big names involved. Say Secretary of, everything important that is involved with this now, but they're involved in a nuclear fuel production review. Okay, that's the top line. And I think we'd all agree that there needs to be a lot of discussion around the reactors and subsidies that the reactors are receiving. But where does uranium fit into that review? Is it a big piece of this? Because they talk about addressing concerns. They don't talk about addressing U.S. uranium production in anything other than in relation to the Department of Defense supply. So what's your expectation of what this 90-day review is going to give you versus the rest of the world?
I think that the memorandum and the flavor is that it's got to be a holistic review.
Agreed.
I think the other thing is that certainly we're going to pull out with where we can participate is that, again, the United States consuming 1/3 of the world's uranium products, producing at the front end uranium less than 1%, but then we have conversion on standby. We have foreign-owned enrichment. We don't have ability to go these higher ends. But at the same time, and this is an important thing that needs to be drawn out, Russia, China are building up their capacity that is well in excess of their requirements. So here we are, not even able to produce a percent of our requirements, where our foes are going to be able to produce many times greater than they need so that they can then create a global business to take over the entire fuel cycle in the world, including the United States. So, this is where the national security issue is very significant. There is a huge focus by the United States government on critical minerals, which uranium is one. Mm-hmm. And in our case, as a company, we also produce vanadium, which is a critical mineral. And so this is right up the alley of that initiative. So separate from the nuclear fuel cycle, you have the critical minerals too. So look, it's there's no certainty on the outcome, but we've certainly elevated it to a level that it really needs to be at.
You have, but what's your what do you want out of this review? Do you want certainty on your position? Do you want certainty for the market? Do you want to understand what it means for you financially? And what are the specifics around? What do you want from these guys? Because it seems to me 90 days is not a very long time. I mean, there have been, they've had an initiative for the last 2 years, but I don't know what they've been doing in the last 2 years. But what would they have done in 90 days which they didn't know before?
Yeah. Well, look at our ask are still the same. We're still looking for that 10, 12 million pounds, up to 10 or 12 million pounds of production under contracts. We're not looking at tariffs. Maybe you don't call them quotas. There's other ways of doing that, but we want long-term contracts.
From who?
And
who from?
Still a strong position to ask for long-term contracts. we are not materially changing what we're asking for in terms of the certainty and relief in the front end for the uranium mining side of things.
Who do you want these contracts from? Do you want the Department of Defense, the utilities being made to buy from you? I mean, what are you looking for?
Yeah, look at, we want long-term contracts from utilities, from the Department of Defense. I mean, the Section 232 was a trade initiative, okay? It was a trade initiative. It's focused on trade. Well, now that we're in this larger working group, there are other potential fixes that aren't trade related. It doesn't mean that the trade issues are completely off the table, but it opens up the opportunities on where this could go and how it could potentially be funded, looking forward. So, look at there. It's still early days. You're right. 90 days goes by very quickly. But we agree with the president's decision. Yeah, sure. It was painful that that our shares got hit like they did, and not just our shares, but everybody in the United States. But we actually agree with the decision, and we think the president made the right decision by opening it up to the entire fuel cycle.
So, at what point did you recognize what could happen? Like you started a series of events. Like I said to you way back when, I thought it was a really bold, big move for two small companies in this space to go for it, and I said, I take my hat off to you for doing that, the courage to do that. But at what point did you recognize that actually this may not go the way you wanted it? Was it literally the day the memorandum came out, or did you sense anything before then?
Well, look, I can say, and I can't say, publicly, but I had, for good reason, up until the last 24 to 48 hours, that we had very positive signals that we were going to had a good chance of receiving relief of this material for us in the United States uranium mining industry. And as I said, we had nothing to confirm that. Actually, we didn't have anything positive or to confirm it until that memorandum came out. There were rumors that started to fly. They were not consistent with what we believed and where we were at. When the rumors started to fly and people were saying, "Oh, I confirm this or I confirm that," we didn't know. We did not know.
Okay.
But the one thing that we do know, and as we said, this got into the White House, and I think that they basically ran out of time when the topic of uranium mining and the other steps of the parts of the fuel cycle started to convolute things in terms of really where they should be focused and what decisions they should make.
Okay, so you made a statement to me the last time we spoke. You said you're a winner and you're going to make this thing work. Okay, and I believe that you believe that, and that's great. But do you think winners do everything and anything it takes to win? And if you do you think the 232 is the right move for you then, and do you still feel that now?
Yeah, look at if I had the opportunity to do it again, I would have done it again. I think that 232 was the right step. Mm-hmm. I think it's right in line with I've said it many times that we will be aggressive but not reckless.
Yep.
I think that from my perspective, and again for good reason, we got this thing very, very close to going across the line on our petition. We got the support of Chalmers. We got this national security determination. We knew it wasn't going to be easy. Look in hindsight, it's been more difficult than perhaps I had thought at the beginning of the process. But that's life, isn't it?
Sure. But I mean, talking of which, Mark, you like I said, pretty ballsy move. You've kind of got a bigger outcome than you thought. I think the uncertainty is still there, but we can come to that in a minute. But do you think you've made some enemies along the way? You've got your share price has been hit. Your US colleagues, companies have been hit. Utilities weren't, pro this move at all. I mean, who's out there that's friendly and who's talking to you?
Oh, I honestly, I don't have people that I consider enemies. I think that the utilities, they didn't agree with it. Everybody has to vote their pocketbook, and that included the utilities. And I've had a number of utilities tell me, Mark, it is not personal. We understand why you did what you did. And to this day, with all the number of shareholders I have talked to, yeah, sure, they saw the shares drop by 40% or so, 37% on the day. No, I'm not happy with that. No, they're not happy with that. But I have not had an angry shareholder. Now, after this video, maybe somebody's angry and they want to come talk to me. And I welcome them to call me. I welcome them to call me because I'm an approachable guy.
Yeah.
And I'm looking for big opportunities for our shareholders, not status quo.
Do you think you're going to be punished by utilities as a consequence of this? I know you just said like it's not personal, but will that be reflected in terms of their buying behavior with contracts going forward?
No, absolutely not.
Right. That's a.
There's a lot of rumors, and as I said, if when you look at the other uranium producers in the world, you look at Canada, if you look at Australia, at least. If they had the opportunity to taken a Section 232 route, I will bet you they would have taken that route themselves if they had that opportunity.
Right. I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. With regards to the narrative, I mean, I remember talking with you. I've talked to a lot of CEOs of other uranium companies. We've talked to funds. We've talked to a couple of utilities. The narrative, obviously, knowing what we now know with regards to the President Trump's memorandum, the narrative's changing. Everyone's claiming a win. Everyone's claiming that they called it right. I mean, who do you think actually called it right in all this? I know you said it wasn't the outcome that you wanted, but did you see anyone get this right?
Well, you're right. Where a lot of people are saying, "Oh, it was a win for me. It's a win for everyone." Says it's a win, and here we are still waiting another 90 days. So,
well, we hope it's another 90 days, huh?
I think we called it right because we brought to the attention of the government a fundamental flaw in our fuel cycle and in our national defense with the front end of the fuel cycle. Okay. So I think that in the absence of us filing our Section 232, where would we be today, with regard to the focus on the fuel cycle? So, I think we did what we needed to do. As I said, I don't regret doing what we did. There still is uncertainty. But even on the day, that I said that on the day that, the rumors started flying, everything, I kept saying to people around me, I said, this is not consistent with President Trump. It is not consistent for him to say, no, I'm not doing anything. So when the memorandum came out, I could accept that what was in that memorandum was consistent with what I would expect from President Trump and his administration, that they would need to look at this in a more detailed way.
So he didn't say no, he didn't say yes, he just bought some time. It's part of a much bigger review. Do you think that review is going to finish in 90 days, or probably a bit less than that now?
Well, you're right. It's a large review, and all I can say is in the 232 process, they met all of their time constraints. They were on the day on just about everything that they did. And now this is a bigger group.
With bigger collective problems, Mark. You've got the utilities with multitude of different energy sources as well as nuclear. You've got the gas guys. You've got big lobbyists, and who've been fighting the good fight. And they've got to appease all of those people. I mean, I guess there's room for everyone. It's a question of who gets what slice of the pie. Yeah.
Look, I think it is we've got a tiger by the tail. There's no question. But not all of these things have to be solved in a day, and they can't be solved in a day. And I think that the key things that they need to look at is sort of a phasing of things. I mean, you take the further down in the enrichment cycle of the fuel chain. That you're not going to solve that in a week or a month or 6 months. But we do have things like the conversion and the uranium mining that can be solved quicker because a lot of the infrastructure, a lot of it is in place. A lot of the people are in place. So,
but whose problem is that? You're saying they can look at that, but that's the problem of the company, isn't it? Why is that? Why does the review become responsible for getting U.S. companies up and running again? They can't affect price other than giving certainty to utility companies to be able to put some contracts in place. Is that the way it works?
Well, look at the one complication with the United States compared to Russia and China is the U.S. Basically privatized the vast majority of the front end of the fuel cycle. There is no nuclear fuel cycle in the world that doesn't have government support in virtually every step of that fuel cycle, and that goes with the Russians and that goes with the Chinese. I think what we have found that privatizing the front end of the fuel cycle doesn't work. It's that simple. So the government has the ability to facilitate in different ways if they think it is a priority of national significance. It is complicated, as I said. As I said, that because we're now not just tied to the Section 232, there's other aspects of that. I mean, if you look at it right now, many of the nuclear utilities have received and are receiving substantial support in the various states that they operate in. Substantial support. And, we're talking, 100, 150, 200 million, dollars per year for, 2 or 3 reactors. So
that's at a state level, not a federal level. Is that right? You're saying that's a state level?
No, that's at a state level and federal level. So look at, we're not trying to cost any, we're not trying to unduly burden the fuel cycle with our costs. But I can tell you that when you look at what we ask for, what we're asking for, it is very, very small in the scheme of the fuel cycle. We're small businesses. It's very small.
What are you looking for?
A lot of this is taken out of context on what the true costs are. Now, the other thing that's taken out of context with the true cost is what is the fair value of a pound of uranium produced by Westerners. It's not the current $25 per pound of the spot price.
Right.
That is a depressed, what I call happy hour pound. So, there's a lot of ways the math can be distorted here.
So, but the question I was asking, so what are you after? They can help you in different ways. What are those ways that you would like them to help you with? Is it around permitting and licensing, or is it subsidies, or what do you want?
No, look at the main thing we want is contracts. This is where we haven't changed our position. We want contracts. We want buy American. Certainly the Department of Defense has to buy U.S. uranium. We've got government reactors. There's different ways that it can be incentivized. In the case of our company, we're unique. We have vanadium. We also do recycling of low-level products. We do 1 to 3 reactors a year recycling, and we also have been pursuing cleanup of the Navajo Nation. So
I get it. You've got a lot going on.
$7 billion in trust.
I want to get into the company. I do, but I want to get your insight. You're at the front line. You see this. You hear this every day. So, with regards to whether it be state or federal level subsidies, or a bifurcated market, or permitting made easier, what precisely do you need? Because as you're a producer, you've got a lot of moving parts, a lot of assets. You've got explorers. They're all going to need different things because they're at different stages of evolution. You're going to focus on your company. So what is it that you want for you? And what do you think some of these, explorers are going to need?
Yeah, look, if there's a difference, there's a difference.
Yeah.
What we have a lot of critical infrastructure that is constructed, that is manned, it's operable.
And it's costing you money today, right?
Oh, yeah. Look, we need to get money into our coffers, and that can happen in a variety of ways. As I said, I prefer long-term contracts. It's important to keep producing. We have uranium is a very unique commodity. The technical skills required to find it, to develop it, to process it are rare to find. And if we don't get support to preserve and continue at some level, we will lose those skills. Now, just for an example, even with the Department of Defense, when it comes to things like submarines, aircraft, whatnot, I mean, they continue to build at a certain level just to maintain critical infrastructure and the skills that are necessary for that infrastructure to operate it efficiently. So, those are themes that could be followed. And as I said, the one sort of distortion that happens is people assume that uranium is going to be available forever for $25 a pound, and that's not the case. Cameco will be gone. The uranium production in Australia will largely be gone, perhaps with the exception of Olympic Dam. We need a higher price. So you've got to kind of differentiate between the state-owned enterprises and the Western production. Western production needs to be at $50 a pound or greater to continue.
But that is determined by the market, usually, right? What are you saying? Are you saying that the government needs to step in and affect price or pay the differential between whatever spot is? I know you want contract, but you want contract at $50 plus. If the market isn't at $50, how does the state or federal government help you?
Yeah, look at, as I said, it's probably a combination of things. It could be a combination of the government. It could be a combination of the utilities wearing some of that load. They're receiving subsidies as we speak.
I know.
We're not asking for something that others aren't already receiving here. We know that everything is challenged, but you got to get back to what I said before. We are the largest consumer in the world, and we have zero capability right now. Is that where we want to be? Now, some people will say, I'm fine with that. And I say, no, I'm not fine with it. And I think the average person in DC understands this.
No, I got a stat for you. So this is from the BNEF, which is a Bloomberg source, and they're saying this is May last year. They're saying that 24 out of 60 operating nuclear reactors in the U.S. will struggle to cover their operating costs this time next year. So they need help, and they are getting help now. And you're saying, I just want a piece of that to get our nuclear industry, of which uranium is part of, off the ground, up and running, so that we can be sufficient to some level.
Correct.
Okay.
There's a number of, as I said, and again, I talked about these state-owned enterprises and Russia and China. If they didn't have state support, would they be able to function from the beginning to the end of the fuel cycle? And the answer is no.
Right. Okay. So I just want to ask you quickly about your view of Cameco's conference call press release last week. What's your read on what they had to say? And it obviously hasn't had a big. I mean, they're the first guys to kind of blink in this. They've made an announcement on it, but it hasn't really moved the market. Hasn't done anything for equities or buying. So, what's your take on it?
Well, look, I think my take on Cameco is, they're challenged right now too, and losing or getting a very small settlement on this lawsuit that they had, it hurt them big time. I think they're reiterating what I'm just saying, that they need higher prices, or they're not going to restart. What they're not saying is that if their contracts roll off, they're looking at serious, outcomes with Cigar Lake. Cigar Lake also got a finite life on it. so it doesn't have 20 years of life. And so look, I think Cameco is a great company, and I know the management of Cameco. I think they're doing the right things, and I respect them. And I always say that to anyone that asks me about the uranium sector. I say, well, you got to own some Cameco, but they are also very challenged right now too. And I think that they recognize the importance of Western world production.
Mm-hmm. I
I think they kind of subtly talk about that, and they recognize things like critical minerals and having those capabilities. So I guess the only thing I want to say is they're doing the right things. They're challenged like everybody else, but in their benefit right now, they got two things that are helping them. Mainly their longer term contracts, and they're also benefiting from the foreign exchange right now too.
Right. Okay. Thanks for getting into that kind of macro view. I mean, we need to remember the macro economics to this, for this industry, uranium industry, still look good. Nothing's changed. It doesn't matter 232 didn't give you what you wanted. It almost doesn't matter what comes out of the 90-day working group, because the fundamentals don't change. There's a massive supply demand gap, and it's getting bigger by the day. There's billions of dollars being spent on infrastructure. So I think people just need to remember that.
Yeah, and I just want to say something else too, is that that's absolutely right, and and the fundamentals are what the fundamentals are, and everybody kind of over focuses on 232. I've told our shareholders that look, bias for Section 232. Because it is bigger than that, but I understand why people did buy us for 232, because it was looking well,
that's the narrative. Everyone's looking for a catalyst. Everyone wants that catalyst moment. It's 232. It's the working group. It's the WNA. It's when you're down, you cling and reach for anything you can. But I'd say people need to just think a little bit longer than that. And it doesn't matter if it takes another 6 months, another 9 months, another 12 months. It's coming, and it's coming quick. It'll come quickly when it goes. But let's get onto your company, okay? That's why we're here, right?
Yes.
So you talked last time about. I want to talk about specific elements of it. Everyone's seen your report. It's a great presentation. They should look at the presentation. We'll send a link to the presentation on the video. But let's talk about your mill. Yeah. You're one for strategy, right? And you were very clear with me last time. You said the mill is something that you can use to leverage your position as the US's number one uranium producer. You think that people will have to come to you, and there will be discussions to be had at that point, because is it one of three potential working mills in the US?
Look, it's the only operable manned producing facility. There are two other facilities, but both of them haven't ran for like 40 years.
Right.
They've either been partially reclaimed, or in some cases, people have taken a lot of the equipment out. So they're very dilapidated and not able to come online in quick order. So
that's good for you. That's good for you, right?
Functioning. What?
That's really good news for you. But
yes.
What does it mean for the other players in the US market? Now, do you feel that some of them are slightly weaker? Because as long as if this continues to go on, are they slightly weaker? Are they in a position? Are you looking at mergers? Are you looking at takeovers? Are you looking at JVs? What's happening?
Well, look at the mill. It puts us in a strong position, particularly with the conventional miners, particularly if anybody wants to produce vanadium or some of this recycle. There was a phrase that was used 40 years ago, and it says, "He who has the mill owns the district." Okay. Right. Well, back then there were like 25 mills out there in the United States. Well, today there is one that operates and functions. So if you could use that phrase 40 years ago, well, you can certainly use it now when you're the only one that can actually process uranium today.
So what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do? I mean, that phrase does hold true today.
The strategy is the same. We need higher prices for conventional mining. We'll always give the main priority for that to be our mines, our ore. We're still, producing vanadium right now. We're still, we're actually shipping low-grade ore from a mine that's on standby in New Mexico right now. So we're actually doing some recycling of low-grade ores from, idle uranium mines. We'll continue to use all those various arrows to improve our cash flow optionality. And that is why that mill survived, because it had the ability to do these side businesses when the price of uranium was low. When it comes to others that want to use the mill, when it comes to others that use the mill, we'll consider that on a case-by-case basis. It is our facility. It's probably worth $300-400 million if you replaced it. We've got 70 or 80 people there right now working there. We're not going to do it for free. We're going to do, if we consider processing somebody's ore, we want a fair margin on that, and that is entirely reasonable.
Yeah, and I guess you can push that margin out because you know what it's going to cost them to move it somewhere else, right? It's easy.
Well,
maths,
yeah, there's
right?
no place to move it to, and if somebody thinks, well, hey, we'll ship you some material and you can get a 10% margin on that, and we can use the mill whenever we want to. No, we're not doing that.
But isn't that an opportunity? If people buy into the macro story here, and I'm talking institutions, I'm talking banks, debt, etc., if they buy into that macro story, then surely now is the time to go and talk about some acquisitions of competitors, whether it be explorers with licenses, but with some kind of resource, or even producers perhaps struggling a bit, developers who are struggling a bit. Isn't now the time? Or do you not think you would get that ear?
Look at, in the 232 process with the remedy that we asked for, we were staying away from M&A activity because we were looking for a industry solution, not just a solution for UR Energy and Energy Fuels. And we were trying to allow enough critical mass for there to be competition amongst the various parties, the few parties that remain in the United States. Well, if we're not going exactly that route and you're more focused on critical infrastructure and whatnot, that direction may change. So, we are not opposed to M&A activities if it makes sense, and maybe a little lesser so than perhaps when we were in the actual 232 process.
Sure.
But I want to stress, we were looking for an industry solution. And a lot of other producers or producer wannabes were riding on our backs, hoping we would get that across the line. So, we'll be open, Matt. We'll be open.
Okay. You don't want competition, though, do you?
Well, look, at some level of competition is healthy. We're certainly not trying to come up with a monopoly. I mean, I know some people said, well, we're monopolized by owning the mill. We monopolize by owning the mill because we own it and we pay for it. If somebody wants to go out and permit and construct a mill somewhere else in the United States, they're free to do that.
So tell me, how much cash have you got left?
Well, look, and I can't say, but in complete accuracy, but look, it should have a 40 million handle of cash working capital.
Right.
So we're still in a strong position compared to our peers, and that's by choice. And we're glad we have that position right now.
Well, you told me you need to have a cash position. You want to have a cash position that makes you feel in control. Are you going to need to go and raise any more money anytime soon? How long can you sit this out?
We don't want to raise money at these prices.
No.
But it is important in this business to not get too close to the wire, and I think that a lot of people own us because of the fact that we don't sell too close to the wind, and particularly when you have the permitted facilities that we have. I mean, they are expensive, and and you don't want to get that close, because you can have an event like we saw with how the stock reacted on Section 232. So yeah, we're gonna try to maintain our strong position as much as possible.
Do you think your shares were inflated before the 232 announcement? Do you think people were, thinking this could go your way and you're back down at the level you should be?
Well, I mean, that's debatable. I think we got overpunished. But there's obviously people were in the shares because they thought there was going to be a positive outcome. The story was so strong. So look, I think if you look at right now, I mean, even after the 12th of July, a lot of the uraniums have come off, globally. I mean, if there were people that are in the stock because, look, they thought that we had line of sight to positive cash flow and profits.
Okay, so where do you go now? What's next? You wait for this 90 days. What are you doing during that 90 days? Is it business as usual? And then what?
Yeah, look, it's. I mean, the focus is on, what can, potentially get us to, cash flow quicker, faster, inflection point. So we're going to focus extensively on these working groups. We'll spend a lot of time in DC. We will spend a lot of time working with the administration and these various groups that will be participating in the working group. We're still working on the Hill. We had very strong support on the Hill. With Senator Brasso, Liz Cheney, we had 50 congressmen sign a letter in our support that they sent to the president. We had 39 of our Native American employees that work at White Mesa Mill on their own initiative, wrote a letter to the president. We'll keep pushing every angle we can push. But at the same time, we're going to be, looking at our cost and our burn, and how to best manage our balance sheet to give ourselves plenty of runway here.
Okay, you said earlier on you don't regret doing it. You would do this again, but has it been a distraction?
Look, it took a lot of our time. But as you pointed out, we're trying to come up with an inflection point. We're trying to make our luck. We're not trying to just sit on our seat. There's a lot of people out there that all they're focused on is just doing nothing and preserving their capital, and that's not making your luck. That's just waiting. That's with hope as a strategy. So we will always try to make our luck. And, Matt, as you know, I've been involved in this business for over 40 years. I've produced uranium all over the world. Our assets are the best in the world for the sort of the size that we fit into in terms of these junior companies. I voted with my feet. I came back from Australia for this opportunity. I have no regrets that I did that either. But it's a tough business. And if you're not tough, you shouldn't be in it.
Well, that's a great point to finish on. The mining is not easy, and it's been particularly tough.
The whole resource sector is challenged. There's no question. And certainly with the 232 petition, we certainly got some attention on it from all sorts of angles.
Yeah.
And as I said, look, it's been a big challenge, but I can tell you, I sleep well at night. I'm confident, but again, I will not be reckless.
Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate your time. What a fantastic, honest appraisal of the situation. I think we all appreciate that, and we look forward to hearing what happens in the next 70, 80 days, I guess.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks very much for watching. We hope you enjoyed that. And if you did, please click the button in the corner of the screen to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also catch us on our website, cruxinvestor.com, and Cruxcast, our podcast series. Plus, most days you can catch us on LinkedIn and Twitter. We'd love getting your feedback, so please keep that coming, and we'll speak to you again soon.